let yourself melt into this moment. Sensing your feet. And if they're on the floor, just taking in the ground underneath you. Or whatever your feet are touching. Feel the ground. The support. Hear the sound of this one note as if it's a calling from deep within you to return into that silent depth of your origin. In your own way, call upon the presence of that which has drawn you here. Whether for you, that's God, that's the mystery, the deep heart. And as you turn your awareness to that depth, that sacred presence that's drawn you here, that makes you interested to give a weekend of your time. Feel that place inside that is love. That is remembrance. And give yourself to that. Like a soft surrender. That gives you back to yourself. Gives you everything you need. And as you turn towards that sacred presence inside, you are supported by all beings who've ever realized that depth. All of the enlightened beings from all of the great traditions. All angels, all bodhisattvas, shower their blessings upon us now. As if together we sit in a shower of light. A shower of grace. shower of blessings for our time together. I decided it was time to do a retreat on the theme that is really the quintessence of what all of the great spiritual teachings are inviting us to. East and West, it really comes down to this: be still. It's there in the Western mystery traditions, in the Psalms common to the three great Western religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, is the Psalm, "Be still and know that I am God." In the East, Ramana Maharshi said the universal truth could be summed up very simply as "I am that," which is really the classical Advaita Vedic perspective of the ultimate truth of what we all are, what all beings and things really are. That's really pointing to the fact that at the depth of us is the totality of everything, or God. In the same way that if we were to look at a molecule of water in the ocean, we can see that the molecule is the ocean. It's not possible that the drop of water that's part of the ocean can be separate from the ocean itself. Any way more than a sunbeam can be separate from the sun. We see the sunbeams peeping out of the clouds. It's a beautiful sight, an inspirational sight. But of course, that sunbeam is an extension of the light from which it came. It's not separate from the source of that light. And so that's really what's meant by that essential understanding, I am that. And Ramana said that the way to know I am that is to be still. So this weekend we're going to be looking at what does that really mean? Is it more than just sit down, shut up, face a wall, gaze at your navel? I think so. Although we all know that quietening the surface activity in any practice that helps to calm and soften the agitation of our consciousness is a useful ally. But be still and know is more than just an invitation to formal meditation practice. It's really an invitation to be. So, when we begin on the spiritual path, it certainly usually doesn't feel that I am that. That's usually not our emotional reality. And so for all of us, the spiritual journey begins with a journey that feels like it's a journey to something other than what we are. Whether we think of that as a journey to the I am, or the journey to God, or a journey to wholeness, however we language it for ourselves, it feels like it's a journey to something else at first. And there's nothing wrong with that. And that's because for most people, our experience of what we are is of someone separate, a person of history, a bunch of thoughts and beliefs and opinions and conditioned responses. And that's the human condition of being identified with our personality, with what we've constructed over the course of our lifetime, or perhaps many lifetimes. And there's nothing wrong with that. That's just part of the human journey. And so in the beginning, it feels that our journey is a journey to something sacred. And so we might engage a spiritual practice or some spiritual teachings that help us to orient towards the innermost depth of ourself, that help us loosen and chip away at the more dense aspects of our character that, can be grabby and greedy and selfish and slothful, and, the 7 deadly sins kind of got it down. These aspects of the more basic, primitive parts of ourself that we all have. But as we engage a spiritual path, whether it's meditation, prayer, inquiry, journaling, meditation, as it gets established, there's a turning where it feels that the path we're walking is a path with some presence, path with spirit, with God, with a sacred presence, with a sacred guide. There's a sense of partnership that unfolds, and we learn to turn to that inner presence for guidance. We learn to pray. We're in relationship with something deeper than our own mind. And that's important because it develops humility, receptivity, obedience, mindfulness, qualities that are helpful and important and really useful for the flourishing of the more subtle aspects of ourself. And if that keeps deepening, another shift occurs where we start realizing the deeper we get into our own soul, we start to hit upon the felt sense, the taste of the molecule in the ocean, that the fact of our existence is not to our personal credit. That which makes us even draw breath is some mystery, some grace, that which makes all kinds of seeds turn into all kinds of plant life, that which makes the sun rise in the east and set in the west every day without us having to put a vote in and say we need that to happen. We see that there's a majesty and a mystery to existence itself that is what's birthed us, what's breathing us, and what's even causing us to be interested to journey into the depths and to know what really is. So we start to feel the miracle of this non-dual level, where practice becomes one of remembrance and abiding. Learning to abide, learning to recognize, learning to surrender, learning to abide. And that's what the focus is for these few days together. So I find it very interesting that neither in the East or in the West is the teaching, be still and think, I am God. You see, spiritual awakening or deepening is not really a conceptual process, although there might be important things for us to learn and discover. Be still and know. The knowing is not really an intellectual knowing. It's not about information per se. In mystical Christianity, they speak of the nous, N-O-U-S, which is the knowing of the heart. And it's not just the emotions, it's the deeper heart, the heart that is deeper but includes all emotions, the heart that is love and wisdom together, And in some of the Western mystery schools, that is depicted as an eye, like an eye in the heart. Not an eye, an eye in the heart, a seeing. And so part of the beauty of really deepening the knowing into the be still and know is that we get to see things very clearly through an eye that is not cracked, doesn't have a fogged lens in front of it, is pure and clear and inherently sees with love. This is very, very important. It's very important that we learn to look on everything through the lens of both wisdom and love. And that includes our ego. You see, it's pretty obvious to most of us, if we've been engaging in some kind of spiritual practice for a while, that the primary obstacle to knowing the I am presence is our personality. The adaptive mechanisms and habits and opinions and judgments and conditioned habits and responses and emotions and defenses that we've all evolved through the course of our early life, and they can be hard to loosen. And it's very easy because those things tend to cause a lot of trouble in our life, in our relationships. My approach involves ego relaxation, not ego annihilation. And here's why. Whatever part wants to kill off the ego can only be the ego. And it doesn't work. So this is a more feminine orientation to spiritual practice that is not aiming to kill off or amputate any part of you, even the parts that are egoic and conditioned. The resolution is not extermination, but knowing yourself deeper. Not just intellectually, knowing through direct experience what you are that's more fundamental than your personality, than your habits, than your defenses. In that knowing, we are changed. Jesus said, "Ye shall know the truth, and the truth shall set you free." It's interesting, you shall know the truth. There it is again, the new. In direct knowing, transformation happens of itself. And it happens through grace. Because grace unfolds when there's space. So as we learn to not try and amputate or fix the limitations that we come across within ourselves, the fears, the insecurities, the beliefs, the doubts, the tendencies to defend and justify and protect. And if we see them through the eyes of love, and we just allow them to be brought to the light of awareness, things start loosening and dissolving all by themselves. It's very beautiful. Because when we allow our ego structures to just come to the light of awareness with the spirit of love, then true nature or God can unfold in the way that's needed. And part of the philosophy why that's so is that your soul wants to be what it actually is. Why else are you here this weekend? But because something inside you feels an excitement, feels a yearning, feels some recognition, yes, this is for me, I want this. This feels right. So that very recognition that made you say yes to being here contains intelligence and power that knows exactly how to unfold, and it will be a little bit different for each of us, because the curriculum of your soul has its own path. It's as if we all are walking a universal curriculum. Every human being, in a way, is asked to see what's true, to learn to love, to grow, to forgive, to break free in some way, to develop courage, to come home. But there's a very personalized version of that universal curriculum. Have you noticed? Like we seem to be given the things, the circumstances, the situations that, if we really look back reflectively, are precisely the circumstances that will orient our soul to grow in the way that is needed. And sometimes the things that arise to help us grow are not easy things. You see, we are grown by both love and suffering. We're grown in different ways by the blessings and the goodness, the warmth, the companionship, the caring, the sweetness, the things that feel just so nourishing to our soul. And we're also grown by the challenges. We get to stretch and develop a different kind of musculature through the difficulties. And so all of that is grace, really, when we see it clearly. And so part of what be still means is learning to relax the resistance to whatever is. Learning to trust that what life is presenting us with are invitations to birth more of what we really are. And Western life demands that we deal with the world, that we learn to relate, that we learn to deal with ordinary stuff, handle money, hold down a job, be part of society. And so it's much harder to practice spiritually. It's a whole other leg of the journey, to be in the world but not of the world. And be still helps us. If we understand it as more than just sit down and meditate, if we really understand it as an invitation to not get hypnotically drawn by the constant chasing, to learn to not leave ourselves, to learn to be present, to learn to relax the usual tendencies of grasping and rejecting and hoping for something different. So a lot of what I'm teaching and sharing with you is coming from a transmission that first emerged for me after 20 years of very dedicated spiritual seeking. It was good seeking, a lot of meditation, a lot of prayer, a lot of dedication, a lot of study, but very much seeking for something that would fix this thing called me. Something that would resolve this problem that seemed to be my personality. And I was sitting in a cave that had once been the home of this beautiful being, Ramana Maharshi, in South India. And it was in a mountain that many have been for thousands of years. That's a holy place of pilgrimage, especially for those people in India who are devotees of Shiva. So I was sitting in this cave back in 2005 when I was just meditating without expecting anything to happen. It It's always when you're not trying that the grace can show up. So I was just sitting, just meditating quietly, and the transmission came forth like an inner explosion that was subtle, but it had a very profound effect. And it came with the transmission, be nothing, do nothing, get nothing, become nothing, seek for nothing, relinquish nothing, be as you are, rest in God. So, be, do, get, become, seek for, and relinquish really call the game up. If you look at most of the daily activity of all of our lives, you'll see there's a lot of trying to be someone, trying to hold up some self-image, trying to keep at bay the negative self-images, and trying to live up to the idealized self-images, the person we would like to be. There's a lot of doing to try to hold that together. A lot of activity trying to prove ourselves, trying to attain certain goals that we think will fulfill the inner expectations we have of ourselves, or the expectations we presume others have of us. We're trying to get something other than what we have. We're trying to become some better version of ourselves, more spiritual version perhaps, more enlightened version, more loving version. We're trying to relinquish the parts of our personality that we deem unacceptable. A lot of pushing and pulling. That is the activity of the ego. Rejection, grasping, seeking, efforting, striving, hoping, seeking. And it's what causes your exhaustion. I read that years ago in A Course in Miracles, where it says, the burden of your incessant judgment is literally exhausting. And I remember hearing that and reading that and recognizing, oh my goodness, it's true. But be as we are really brings us back to the perennial question, then who am I? And all spiritual teachings ultimately bring us to that question, which we can't answer with the mind. We might be able to say, I am a certain age, I'm a man or a woman, I come from this country or this state, I do this for a living, I have these family members, children, grandchildren, I'm married to this person, or not married and want to be married. Right? We can point to what our body looks like. But we know that none of that quite does it. Even to say, I am love, isn't quite it. Because there's something about us that can't be pinned down, that is so pure. Course in Miracles says, the truth in you remains as radiant as a star, as pure as light, as innocent as love itself. This depth of you and I and everything and everyone can't be destroyed. It can only be hidden. It's timeless, birthless, deathless, infinite, boundless, beautiful, pure, free. It's everything we've ever wanted. You're already it. So how do we know that? How do we taste that? How do we begin to live from that? Ego relaxation invites us not to try to get to some special state, not to try to attain some samadhi or some non-dual zone, but to simply be undefended, be open, and be interested to turn within and see what's here, what's really here. So my method really is centered around holistic self-inquiry and devotion and meditation. Those three things work in tandem. So holistic self-inquiry isn't trying to transcend anything. It doesn't have an agenda to get you to some non-dual state. The principle is that we meet whatever is, whatever phenomena is arising, whether that's a reaction, whether that's sensation, whether that's feeling, whether that's memory, whether that's questioning, yearning. We meet the what, the phenomena of whatever's arising. And because everything, the ground of everything, is the I Am Presence, is God, whenever we meet anything honestly, truly, nakedly, without defense, we're drawn naturally deeper into the who. We don't get there conceptually. We relax in and through our direct experience with no agenda other than the truth. Out of our love for reality. And we let grace lead the way. We let the grace that's birthed us into existence lead the way. It seems to know the way. If we really contemplate everything around us in the natural world, there's an intelligence that's inherent, a harmony that's quite staggering. And so learning to let ourselves be is perhaps the most direct and beautiful spiritual practice I could possibly offer you. It's so unconditional, so loving, so embracing, so respectful. That's what we'll be practicing with this weekend, primarily. But the primary obstacle is seeking. One of the primary obstacles to letting ourselves be is seeking. So you might have remembered when you were a child playing the game hide and seek. I've asked a lot of people, and it seems that not just Australian children played hide and seek. It seems that Americans played it too. Did you play that? Mm-hmm. Right. So you might have remembered in the game hide and seek, the game starts by one child closing their eyes while the other children look for a really cool place to hide. And the fun at first is finding a really great place where they're never going to find you. Right? So if you're really crafty, you'd be jumping out the door and, hiding behind some plant way, way, way around the back of the building, or, something really sneaky. And that's great fun at first. But have you noticed that there's something that tends to happen at a certain point in the game where a different desire emerges in the child that seems universal, where all of a sudden it's not fun anymore to be hiding and them not to know where you are. When that goes on too long, it's like, no, that's not what we want. We want to be found. And so the game goes, you'll see little fingers come out from behind the couch, or a lock of hair emerge, and these little obvious maneuvers that reveal the desire in the child to be found. Isn't that amazing? And then the complete laughter and the fun when they pounce on you. Right? And then the game starts all over again. But there's something profound about that dynamic, that movement, that I want to call to our attention. Because perhaps where you are right now is a place where it's not so much fun anymore to keep hiding from yourself. Perhaps it's not so interesting to you to keep hiding out in your defenses, to keep cut off from certain things inside of yourself, to put up a front. Perhaps that's getting a little boring. And perhaps what's more interesting to you is to be found. All parts of yourself, just for real contact, for contact with what's real. Even if what's real on a relative level is some hurt parts that want to be contacted and understood, met with compassion, forgiveness. Maybe what wants to be found is a deep truth at the core of some reaction. Maybe there's something true in and amidst why we keep getting hooked on this damn thing. Or maybe there's just a wanting in our deep heart to stop circling around our meditation practice. Maybe what we want is just to let ourselves drop to the next level. So wherever you are, it's all welcome here. I regard everything that you bring, whatever grapplings that you're working with in your inner life, as holy, as the gateway. Everything can be the gateway deeper into God. If you don't protect, defend, push, seek, if you relax into your direct experience and open into it, let it reveal.